Hey guys, this is Gaijin Hunter. Like many of you, I have been looking forward to the demo for Monster Hunter Stories 2 Wings of Ruin, and I wanted to give you my thoughts on the demo now that I've played it almost 13 hours. Yeah, I know, the demo, 13 hours. I admit I'm overdoing it. Most people will probably get a good, healthy, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 hours, maybe 4 hours out of this, if you're just going through the critical path, but that is the nature of these games, right? How much do you want to pour into it? How much do you want to collect? Do you want to clear all the subquests and that kind of stuff? So I wanted to bring you a video, but I didn't want to script it out because I really just want to ramble on as long as I need to and just tell you my thoughts. Now, keep in mind, this is coming from someone who adored and loved the first game to death. I also love the anime. They had like 2 seasons here in Japan. I think they had 1 season translated and dubbed into English and done overseas. I don't know if that was done well or not, but I'm a huge fan. So for me, this is like my dream, right? Like Monster Hunter Stories was one of those sleeper hits that people really didn't know what to think about it at the time. Like, okay, it seems simplistic. It's very different from the mainline formula. How is this going to work? And what we ended up getting was this really, I would almost say, mature story with heart that talked about the relationship between riders and monsters. And it's one of the things that always have appealed to me in the Monster Hunter franchise is that, I mean, the mainline games sometimes blur this line a little bit, but in general, the idea is not that you're killing the monsters to protect, just to kill them. It's not for sport. Normally, if you hear a game, okay, in this game you hunt monsters, it doesn't sound like they're the good guys. But in most cases, you're hunting them to protect them from themselves. Like there's something that has happened. This is why we see the same troop being used all the time, like some phenomenon, some occurrence, some virus, something causing them to go havoc, because the idea is that you're trying to protect them, the wild ones, from the rest of the population so that everything can kind of live in harmony. So I've loved the way that Monster Hunter Stories in particular delves into the concept of riders, but they don't shy away from hunters as well. They include hunters in the world of Monster Hunter Stories. And then you get some really interesting dynamics between people who just cannot understand that monsters can have a bond with you and you can be friends, and they won't accept it. And it's a very interesting story. It is very lighthearted at the end of the day, in the fact that it's a very feel-good story with lots of moments of cuteness, happiness, humor, and just a lot of heart. And it really shows just how much the team behind these games, or I say these games, this is only the second one, really care about the monsters that they're utilizing. They are the main stars, and we are the supporting actors. So anyways, going into the demo, I was expecting this to be just like an HD version of what I remember experiencing on the 3DS, and it is exactly that, but with so much more. Not only is the sound direction, the music, the graphics, the animation, everything is just so sublime. But also just, I would say, the world design is just really fantastic. The menus are great. In fact, I think the menus are probably one of my favorite things about this demo, is seeing how much care they went into crafting it so that everything looks and feels really cohesive and nice. But also, all the menus so far have been super intuitive. So I'm very impressed by whoever was in charge of the UI design. Looks absolutely cinematic and fantastic. Now I will say this right now because some people are going to ask about it and they do care about it, which is the frame rate. Unfortunately, that is the one point where I think I could criticize or say like this definitely leaves something to be desired, which is that the frame rate goes, and it's uncapped. So sometimes it feels like it's going 60, sometimes it feels like it's going 30, sometimes 50, sometimes even dipping down to like 20s. It's a little all over the place, and depending on how sensitive you are to that or how much that bothers you, you might either want to wait for the full game and see if they've managed to iron those out, because demos are usually prepared before they do the final optimization for the final game, or just get it on PC, which is launching it the same day, because I've heard from early previews that it's a very light game in terms of how much resources it requires. And there you can enjoy high resolution and high frame rates. But if it's something like, the good thing is it's the demo, right? So you could download it for free and try it and see if it bothers you. For me, it stuck out, I would say, for maybe the first 30, 45 minutes. But after a while, I think my eyes adjusted. And I think there's just something psychologically, like when you go to a game with either irregular or slower frame rates. At first it's jarring, but then I don't know if it's psychological, like nothing's changed and it's just your perception, or whether or not your brain is starting to fill in the frames. I don't know, but I stopped noticing it, and it was still there. Like if I looked at it, I was like, oh yeah, there was a dip, but it stopped actually distracting me, which was really nice, because you don't know until you try things out. So do try out the demo, but that is one point that I think we all have to mention. It just pleads the case again for the need for a high-end Switch would be awesome, which I still think we're going to get probably like next year. Like at the launch of Rise Ultimate, I could see maybe a high-end Switch coming out, and that would also make this game run even better. But it's not, for me, it's not that big of a deal, so I'm not going to wait. I'm not going to get on PC. I'm very happy to play this on Switch. Granted, I've only tried this in dock mode, so lowering the resolution by playing in handheld may actually produce better results, but I'm not going to do tests on this stuff until we have the full game. Again, this is a demo. It's a separate code than the final game, and for all we know, they could do a patch in like a few weeks after release that, further stabilizes it. Who knows? But getting that negative out of the way, oh my gosh, the positives are so many. Just the general flow of the fact is they didn't even make a demo. What they did was they took the first chapter and they just gave it to you, and it plays so well. The tutorial is paced and explained so well. Now, granted, there's a lot of systems in this game that are going to seem a little daunting or confusing, like gene editing, transferring one gene from one monster to another, doing the bingos. But that's the thing. The game doesn't even explain it that much to you because it's not important yet. And that's a lesson that all the mainstream Monster Hunter games can really take some lessons from. Don't introduce mechanics before you need to. So the tutorial is very simple. It's very easy to understand. There is a little depth there if you want to go crazy. If you remember how it worked from the first game, you don't quite get put a point where you're able to alter the DNA of the monsters, but you are able to, pick up different eggs and then see what you get. And then I think a trained eye would know, okay, this monster is probably better. But the difficulty on this game is not hard. It's just fun. In that regard, it reminds me of Pokemon games, but the battle is nothing like that, in my opinion. Everyone says it's the Pokemon of Monster Hunter, but the fact is that the monsters move and do what they want to do. You don't control them all the time. You are a participant in the battle, and it is just as significant as the monster, if not more, sometimes. And your job is to be a hunter and also be a rider. And so, there's lots of different things to keep track of, which is like, what is my monster thinking they're going to do? Because you can see what move they're going to use. And sometimes you're like, oh, baby, yeah, like that's awesome. Like that's exactly what you should be doing. But sometimes they're like, no, I don't think you should be doing that. And then you can use your built-up points to give them a direct command and say, no, do this. If you notice that you and them are doing the same attacks, you can do the dual attacks to build up even more gauge. And it's just so much more engaging than just your traditional turn-based, I attack, I heal, you attack, stuff like that. What makes this even better, though, is that they've added in the idea of a second rider with you. So it's a total of 4 of you. So it's you and your monstie, and then an NPC and their monstie. I'm just going to call it monster from now on, because monstie just sounds kind of funny to me. But it's really neat now, because now you have 3 pieces of AI that are moving on their own. You are in direct control of yourself, and you can influence your monster. So it just doubles down on this idea that things are engaging and unfolding almost like a real-time thing. And it's really cool. Like, I'll look at the NPC and see that Kana is going to be doing a power attack. I see that my monster is going to be doing a power attack. And so I decide not to interrupt it. Like, I'm not going to give my monster instructions because I know that they're probably going to do a synchronous attack together and they'll get gauge, which is great. So there's lots of different things like that where you look at the different parties and you can decide what you do based on the other 3. So that's insanely cool. Obviously, the kinship attacks are incredibly cinematic. It feels like you're watching an anime or playing an anime, so to say. And now being able to have 2 riders do them together is just crazy. It truly is a love letter to Monster Hunter fans. The bestiaries are really well done so far in the demo. There's lots of good information. For example, in the game, Actually, this is a good subject I'll just break into, which is how much the game realizes that it's a grindy formula and they're not going to waste your time too much. What I mean by that is, for example, you run into a monster on a map and you're like, oh, I want one of those. But you go into all these randomly generated caves, which you could just keep regenerating them just by looping the time of the day. Like, okay, I'll go to the afternoon, look around, see if there's a gold cave that's rare. Nope, okay, loop it back to afternoon. Like, you can do that. But it could be frustrating if you're going after a specific monster and you're pulling eggs and you're just not getting the egg that you want. So it has a system for Monster Hunter Stories 1 where if you read the bestiary, they'll say, how can you get a monster to retreat? And there's different methods for different monsters. Like for some monsters, you'll throw a paintball at them, and then if you beat them within like 3 turns, there's a high probability that they will run away. And that is pretty much a guaranteed egg. So they'll run away, immediately a cave appears in front of you, which is them. I noticed in the demo that a cave can appear inside of a cave, so that's how much they want to reward you for this. And then you can go in there and you can get an egg of that monster. So I think that's insanely cool. There's also a new feature they added where if you're at a high enough level versus the monsters that you're up against, you can just hit ZL and ZR to immediately win the battle, and it just ends. And it counts for everything, like a one-turn kill. You get experience points, you get the material points. It's very easy now to just grind for lower monsters if you want to finish out some sets, level up some new monsters that you got. I think that's a fantastic feature. Some people may not like it, they may say it's taken away from the grind, but these games have so much grind in them. Again, not by necessity, it's you play as deep as you want to play these games. You can go through probably stories in like 40 hours and be done with it. Or if you want, you can get really into the DNA crafting and the customization, and you can spend hundreds of hours. You know, it's really up to you. So there's just endless amounts of possibilities here with the DNA board once we're able to play with it. So I also love, I can't remember if this was in the first game, but the maps can get pretty big and vast. And there's lots of reasons to come back to older maps, because as you get new monsters with new field abilities, like for example, you'll see vines around the place and there's probably a treasure chest up above, but if you don't have something like a Congalala, you can't climb up it. If you do have them, you don't have to have them selected. The game will let you automatically switch to them. So there's all these like nice little quality of life things that handle pretty good. But the maps are pretty large. And it can get a little confusing in most games, like, okay, was I heading up or left? Like when you're exploring. In this game, on the map, it shows you little dots of where you just came from, so you can look at the map and know exactly where you've traveled and where you haven't. And that makes it so you don't get lost. So they were able to keep the large, randomly generated big maps, but they're also making it in a way so that you don't get lost. And I think that's a fantastic feature. Again, please go out and try the demo. It is free. I find it wonderful. I know that the system gets deeper because I played the first game, so if you're feeling that you like the game but you're looking for a little bit more depth, I would say don't worry. They're going to have dozens and dozens and dozens of monsters. I think there's probably going to be over 80 monsters that you can ride in this game. Tons of dungeons, tons of ways to craft the exact monster you want. If you want to have a fire-breathing Mizutsune, you'll be able to make that. Like, there's like all these different ways that you can mix and match and create the monster of your dreams. And then there'll be probably a PvP element, I'm assuming, like an arena like the first game. And we still don't know about how the co-op works because we'll have to wait for the final game, but there is a way that you can play with another player, which I think is going to be awesome. Yuna really enjoyed the demo, and she's someone who does not like to grind. For someone like me with my just, I don't know, attention deficit or whatever you want to call it, like, I love the grind. I love just being able to go into maps, press the A button, gather tons of materials, the slow leveling up, the building up the resources, making lots of zenny. Like, I like that stuff. She hates it. But the good thing is that, at least in the first chapter, the game is not requiring you to do it. So she was able to play through it in, like, I think she put in about 6 hours. And she's happy. Now she's just going to wait for the full game. I, on the other hand, have gone 13 hours because I've just been I wanted to clear all the subquests. I wanted to get some of the extra gear that you can get in this game for the chapter 1. And there's a challenge in there at the quest board that's very hard. Hard in the sense is that you do need to know how to switch weapons, but you also need good AI. So there's a huge element of chance that the AI is not going to behave properly, There are ways you can influence it, but that's a whole nother topic. But there's plenty to do, so go ahead and check it out. I hope this doesn't sound like an advertisement, but I just really love Monster Hunter Stories. It's one of my favorite. I did not dream. I was hoping that we would get a sequel one day, and I'm so happy that we are. And because it's not tied to any TV show or anything like that, I won't have to worry about TV stations doing copyright claims like I had with the first game, which means that I plan to cover this one extensively. There's still a lot of videos I want to make, obviously, for Monster Hunter Rise, which I've not made because I've just been prioritizing playing the game with my daughter, and I've already just hit over 600 hours on that. We're starting to slow down a little bit, just a little bit, but we're still playing several hours a day, so as that slows down, I'll be able to go in and make more videos, but I also want to cover stories as well, so there's just more than enough to talk about when it comes to Monster Hunter. It's a very good year to be a hunter and a rider, so yeah, let me know down in the comments below what your thoughts are of the demo, if you're going to get it on Switch or PC, or if it's just not your thing. You know, it's a different formula, so it's not for everybody, but I would just tell you, don't write it off until you try it, because I think a lot of people hear turn-based and like, yeah, that's not for me. Give it a try, see if you like it. If it's not for you, it's not for you. If it is, you're in for a treat. Anyways, that's my extended thoughts on the demo for Monster Hunter Stories 2. I am super in love, cannot wait for the full release, and hope you guys are excited as well. Anyways, hope you liked the video, and until next time, happy riding.